IBM. Sir, we have to ask, what is your number one tip to stay mentally fit? Mr. Suresh, over to you.
Hey, hi, Nikita. Good afternoon. You asked what is the number one tip to stay mentally fit?
Yes.
I think it's very simple. If people have to get 8 hours of sleep.
Beautiful answer, Mr. Suresh. I think, unfortunately, in the corporate world, right, I've noticed that it's almost a sense of pride to be sleeping for 4 to 6 hours, and you have people brag about that. Have you ever experienced this?
Yes, yeah, it's a mark of honor. People sort of brag about it. Yes.
Fantastic and wonderful lignal picture, like we suggested. Where was that shot?
Oh, it was in Uttarakhand, very much in India.
Wow.
Yeah.
Uh, fantastic answer, Mrs. Suresh. And we are absolutely awaiting for your session. Over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Nikita, for that warm introduction, and I thank the audience also. Good afternoon to all of you. My name is Suresh, and I work for IBM. I handle the business for the IBM Z and the Linux One platform across the India South Asia region. And I am here to introduce you to the IBM Linux One platform in the next 15 odd minutes. And before I launch into the product introduction, I sort of wanted to set a context, and actually I'm connecting with what the previous speaker, Mr. Simli, mentioned, right? So he said he spoke about the scale of Industry 4.0 and the cyber security challenges, and that's exactly what I had prepared in my comments as well, right? India is definitely a fast-growing economy, and digitalization is definitely apace in industry, and that's what we call Industry 4.0. And given that scale of India, that is the number of customers, like 1.3 billion people in this country, and the number of transactions, right? The scale that IT infrastructure has to serve is really daunting, right? And add to that, like what Mr. Simli said, data privacy and data security. And mind you, both of them are very compute intensive tasks, right? When you add these two, right, it is indeed a real IT challenge that we have in hand, and that's where I think the Linux One, IBM Linux One, would be the right platform to address these kind of scalability, security, and privacy challenges. Right. With that introduction, let me get into the presentation. So, what is the Linux One? It is a IBM's server hardware, right? It's a platform product. And what it does is it delivers high performance, confidential computing, extremely high levels of horizontal and vertical scalability, very high amounts of availability. When I say availability, it's like 5 nines of availability, and at very compelling total cost of ownership, right? And that's what this platform is all about. Let me sort of detail out what each of this means. Okay. So how does it deliver higher performance? It is thanks to the CPU, which is definitely faster than anything else available in the market. The base frequency on this server is 5.2 gigahertz. If you compare it with a typical Intel server, where the maximum after turbo boost is 5 gigahertz, so this is a base frequency, right? And not only the core CPU, but the entire architecture of the server is designed differently with a lot of add-ons. And what are those? There is an accelerator for on-chip encryption, on-chip compression, right? So all the data flowing in and out of the core is already compressed on the core. It's an on-chip, it's part of the chip itself, right? And what it does in a practical sense in the data center is it accelerates your database backup and recovery, right? And it also makes the entire transfer of data to and from the storage much faster, right? And lastly, you can compress the data before you encrypt it, and that's a very important distinction as to when you compress the data and when you encrypt the data. You can compress it first before you encrypt it without leaving the chip, right? And that brings me to the next feature on the chip itself, which is the on-chip encryption accelerator. Each chip has a dedicated crypto processor, right? And also the machine is optimized for Java workloads, right? Garbage collection is a part of a typical Java application, and when the garbage collection, and garbage is nothing but orphaned objects in Java, and this is something that application owners among the audience will definitely recognize, right? And when the garbage is all these orphaned objects are collected from memory, the application is paused, right? And that actually, I mean, basically the workload is not running for those microseconds and milliseconds, right? And that adds up. I mean, that sort of reduces the performance of the application. In this IBM Linux one, we have enabled something called pauseless garbage collection, which eliminates the pauses. So that dramatically increases the performance of Java applications. And lastly, there is additional processing capacity built into the server to do input and output. That is, transfer of data in and out of the core is not done by the core, right? As any seasoned data center manager will understand, typically when you look at, when you have performance issues and you look at a SAR report or NMON report, IO wait is typically a culprit, right? Basically, what IO wait means is the CPU is waiting for data. Right? Here, the CPU doesn't wait for data. CPU is always busy processing the workload, which is actual calculations. The entire job of moving data in and out of the system, right? Whether it's the core or the entire server, right? To and from the server into the storage is all offloaded to additional compute, right? So all these are built-in features. And here we have a quote from one of our customers who was running Oracle databases, and they saw a 9x performance improvement. Not only that, the next one, performance is one aspect. Second is confidential computing, and that's what I'm connecting with what the previous speaker said. Confidential computing, as defined by the Confidential Computing Consortium, of which IBM is a founding member, defines confidential computing as protection of data in use, right? That is the important difference, right? And this is done by performing the computation in a trusted execution environment. It's a hardware-based trusted execution environment. That's the important distinction between other kind of data security, privacy solutions, and confidential computing. Not solutions, approaches, right? In confidential computing, the data in use is protected, right? and Linux one protects the data at rest using, and then it can enable Linux unified key setup, LUKS, as the Linux administrators will understand it. It also accelerates OpenSSL for SSL and TLS encryption, which protects the data in transit, right? And we can also protect the VMs from each other, and also the container contents from Kubernetes master, which is a typical way in which now hackers are carrying out the attacks, right? Cyber attacks. What they do is, they exploit some vulnerability or some configuration error in the Kubernetes master, and from there they conduct what is typically known as a east-west attack. They traverse in a horizontal direction, right, and then reach the container, and from there on they start collecting the data or infecting the application code with trojans, malwares, etc. Right. So these kind of things are also protected. And here is a quote from one of our digital asset custody solution customers, right, who speaks about the zero trust approach, right. For those of you to whom this is not familiar, digital assets are basically Bitcoin or anything else which is stored in a digital form on a blockchain typically. Otherwise everything is digital, of course, but digital asset is typically stored on a blockchain. And one of the key features about blockchain is immutability. Once the transaction is done, there is no arbiter where you can go back and say, oh, this was a mistake, please reverse it, right? That is the key differentiator, right? So anytime a transaction happens, it's immutable. So digital assets are, that's why hacks are very critical in digital assets, because you cannot get it back. And when you have that kind of environment, which is basically zero trust, this is the way to go. And just to elaborate on that, there are multiple technologies which make this possible. I'll just quickly take you through each of this. Let me move ahead. Yeah. There are 7 different technologies and offerings that we have. The first 4 are actually built into the server. When you get a Linux one, you actually have the first 4 of them available to you out of the box, right? The first one is the on-chip crypto accelerator, which is used for symmetric encryption, right? Symmetric encryption is basically when you use the same key for both encrypting and decrypting. OpenSSL or SSL/TLS, these are the kind of workloads where this is used. That can be accelerated using this on-chip accelerator, right? How is this relevant for a data center person, for IT infrastructure person, is because today most data centers, they don't enable any kind of TLS or SSL within the data center network, right? And most of the hacks are actually insider attacks. What that means is the insider's credentials are misused, right? So we have hackers sniffing at data packets on the DC network. They don't sniff at the packets when they're getting transmitted from the internet user to the data center. The hackers might be having access to the data packets which are flowing on your data center network, and which is typically ignored by most data center managers, because they think that, why should I encrypt data which is within my data center? And of course, it is also compute intensive, so they don't do that, right? So this is where it can help, and this is really the highest level of protection that one can take. Plus, this also offers a true random number generator, which is very important compared to the pseudo random number generators, which are typically used by other servers. The servers are, Linux one is designed with EAL5+ isolation of the LPAR, right? So this the Linux one server offers 2 levels of virtualization, not 1 level. Most of you must be aware of single level virtualization, which is taking a bare metal server and then virtualizing that using KVM or VMware. In the Linux one, the machine is always virtualized. There is no bare metal concept here, right? It is always virtualized using the PRSM firmware. And that virtualized cores, right, are exposed, are carved up into LPARs, right? And LPARs are as good as a physical server, and this is rated at EAL5+ as per the common criteria evaluation assurance level. And like I said, what this means is that one LPAR is sort of air gapped from the next LPAR. So the first one protected you by offering symmetric encryption. The second one, that is a EAL5+, protects against east-west attacks, because if one workload in one LPAR gets breached for some reason, the hacker cannot automatically move to the next LPAR, because the LPAR boundaries are almost impregnable. Okay. The next 2 are secure boot for Linux and secure execution for Linux, which protects against root level attacks and vulnerabilities during the boot process, right? So now we are moving away from the system and the data towards the OS, because that's another attack vector, right? When a hacker wants to get into your system, they can use multiple ways, and infecting the OS is one of them, right? The secure boot for Linux enables you to protect against any kind of malware or injections of malware into the OS image. And the secure execution for Linux helps the KVM administrator isolate one VM from another, right? So these are again 2 different aspects, very closely related, but 2 different aspects. And like I said, these 4 of them are built into the machine, out of the box. And the next 3 that you can see on the screen, the highest FIPS rating and the HyperProtect virtual server and the data privacy passport, these are optional solutions, right? The FIPS rating is provided by the Crypto Express card, which can be configured as a HSM or as a crypto coprocessor. And this is rated at the highest level by Federal Information Processing Standard, which is the standards body for these HSMs. And this HSM is rated as level 4. most of the industry, the HSMs available in the industry are rated at level 3, which is what you must be using in your data center. This one is rated at level 4, which means it is tamper responding, not just tamper sensing, but tamper responding. So in case there's a threat or any kind of electrical, magnetic, chemical attack on the HSM, it actually responds quickly to safeguard the data. And the last two are solutions which are built upon these technologies. The HyperProtect Virtual Server is a software appliance which allows the entire application and the data to be encrypted at rest, in use, and in transit. So basically, the administrator access is also restricted, and the administrators, the privileged users, are also allowed only to access the application through some standard REST APIs. So that way, even the privileged users the privileged users' credentials cannot be misused to commit some kind of hack with the application. And lastly, what happens when you have to protect data that leaves the Linux one, right? That's important, right? Everything every application, every piece of data cannot reside on this server. How do you protect the data when it is going outside of this environment? And that's where this solution called IBM Data Privacy Passports comes into play. What we do is we create something called a passport controller, and that is deployed in a HPVS environment, HyperProtect Virtual Server environment. And that creates a trusted data object which can be sent outside of the system. And depending on the privilege of every user, they can see some of the data or not see some of the data, right? There are both options of masking and encrypting. Both are possible, but depending on the privileges of the particular user, data will be visible to the particular user. And these privileges can be policy based. That means based on the user's role, you could actually say that all these kind of users can see only this data, let's say the name of the customer and nothing else. Some other users, let's say somebody in the call center can see the customer's name and phone number and nothing else, right? So on and so forth. You can set privileges like that. So once you have policy-based privileges, it becomes easier to manage at a scale, right? So with that, coming to the next topic is the scalability. Like I said, the server comes with 5.2 gigahertz processor and various other features of the server. So what that means is one server, and by the way, the Linux one comes in a rack of its own, 42U rack of its own. And you could start off with one core also in a server, and you could go up to 108 cores, and that will do the same amount of performance, deliver the same amount of performance as 1000 x86 cores. Just imagine that. One 42U rack delivering the same performance as 1000 cores. 1000 cores would, assuming, let's say, 32 cores per x86 server, that would be like 30 servers, right? Spread across maybe 2-3 racks. And then think of the networking required for all those servers, right? It's going to be quite a decent sized deployment of across 6 or 7 racks. That can be delivered by one rack, right? And you could also, IBM has, in some tests, IBM has, in the lab tests, IBM has seen that we are able to run up to 2.4 million containers in a single system, right? And we have this quote from a good, one of the larger banks in Vietnam, where they have used the Linux one to run their core banking, and they have seen exceptional performance and scalability and flexibility. So coming to availability, this system is designed for 50 years of mean time between failures. So there is an important concept here called continuous availability, right? The system is designed to be continuously available, whatever be the failure, right? And what can fail in a server? The cores could fail, the memory could fail, the IO cards could fail, power supply could fail, or the cooling unit could fail, right? Out of these 5, the core, memory, and IO are the critical components, because every other server has redundant power and redundant cooling, etc., right? So the IBM Linux one is designed for redundancy at a core level and also at a memory level, right? The core level sparing is a very unique concept, where if one core fails, there are spare cores that automatically get provisioned without any downtime, without any change to your application, right? Nothing needs to be done. They automatically start working. That's a very important concept and a unique concept. And the second is the redundancy in the memory, right? So what happens is, like, you have RAID in disk. IBM has implemented RAID in memory here. We call that RAIN, redundant array of independent memory. And that has prevented memory failures. I mean, no downtime has been recorded by IBM for the last 10 odd years, ever since this technology was launched. And of course, the system is designed for 5 nines availability. The Met Office in the UK uses this system, and they run all their weather prediction application software on this platform. And for them, it's a very critical workload because they have to roll out predictions every 24 hours. So that's what they have seen exceptional levels of availability on this. Lastly, total cost of ownership. Since the number of cores are reduced, the software licenses of any software that is core based is also reduced. Our customers have seen 70% reduction in software costs. And also, since the physical footprint of hardware is reduced, 80% reduction in energy and carbon footprint. And lastly, most customers see that their overall cost, all costs put together, hardware plus software plus services, administration effort, etc., there is a 47% reduction. It becomes almost half. And one customer in ASEAN, a bank, has seen that their software cost, here in this case, it's Oracle software, their software cost became 90% lower, and the overall TCO was 52% lower than Exadata. Right. So with that, I come to the last slide of my presentation. You could visit these links. You could understand more on how you could get onto the LinuxONE platform. There is a TCO calculator there, link there. You could go to that link and check out what is the kind of TCO saving you would get if you move your x86 workloads to LinuxONE. There are also some case studies mentioned. And lastly, if you want to try it out, you want to get a feel of how this actually works. How does the Linux look and feel? Is it the same as something else? Is it different? And what happens? You could always log on to the LinuxONE community cloud and request a VM and play around with it. I will request the organizers to put it up in the website or in the chat, etc., so that you could have access to these links. Thank you so much. Over to you, Nikita.
Fantastic, Mr. Suresh. Of course, one beautiful comment from Mr. Deepak Sade, who writes in, implement automation and sleep peacefully. That is for you. We've got Charudatta, L.K. Tripathi, K.V. Shetty, Akhil Mehrotra, Ram Vatar Singh, and Gaurav Mida, who write in, nice session. And that's entirely because of a leader. That is Mr. Suresh. What a fantastic session it was, sir. Thank you so very much for your time. Thank you so much.